Hello and welcome to the African Tech Roundup, episode 91. This is where we round up the week's most important tech, digital, and innovation news from across the African continent. My name is Andile Masugu, and we're back. Now, I know that in a sense we didn't disappear over the holidays, but many of you who stuck with us over the past month know that we didn't cover the biggest tech and innovation headlines each week, but instead delivered sneak previews from Season 6 of the African Tech Conversation series, which of course you can catch right now at africantechroundup.com or by searching for African Tech Conversations wherever you're listening to this podcast. And so anyway, with the team back from holiday, we're officially back to our normal programming. Now later on in the show, I'll be chatting with Nicholas Stewart. He is the founder and CEO of the Swazi Bridge Project. He attended the world's biggest tech show, CES 2017 in Las Vegas 2 weeks ago, and he'll be sharing some insights he gleaned from the event. Now, we'll also do our best to catch up on some of the biggest stories that broke while we were on break, including Standard Bank acquiring FirePay, the company behind the SnapScan payments app, the George Soros-backed VC Leapfrog aiming to raise $800 million to invest in Africa, and the Nigerian fintech startup Paystack closing a $1.3 million seed investment round involving Tencent, Comcast Ventures, and Singularity Investments. Now that's all coming up, but first, this episode of the African Tech Roundup is brought to you by GoDaddy. Now, GoDaddy makes registering domain names fast, simple, and affordable. They're the world's largest domain registrar, trusted by over 13 million customers around the world, and provide everything you need to get your business up and running online, including award-winning 24/7 support. Now, to save 30% on a new domain name or to use any of their other services, go to trygodaddy.com/AfricanTech. Again, that's trygodaddy.com/AfricanTech to save yourself 30%. Right, so let's see. Let's catch up on the biggest news from the past month or so. First up, some encouraging investment news. Now, the George Soros-backed VC fund Leapfrog has announced their plans to raise $800 million to secure stakes in African banks, insurance brokers, and mobile payments companies to tap into rising demand among low-income consumers. Now, the Washington-based development financing unit of the U.S. government, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, has approved an investment of as much as $200 million in the fund. Now, billionaire George Soros invested in Leapfrog's first fund, the $400 million Leapfrog Financial Inclusion Fund, through his Soros Economic Development Fund, which, by the way, still has some money to spend. But Leapfrog is remaining tight-lipped on just how much the Soros Economic Development Fund has sunk into their second fund. But most pundits around the continent agree that this is a big deal, given the sheer size of Africa's unbanked populations, and of course statistics that point to about 2/3 of Africa's population earning between $2 and $10 a day, as well as the fact that the continent's middle class is still less than 15%. There's no doubt that the next few years are going to be huge for tech-driven financial innovation on the continent. But staying with fintech investment news, South Africa's Rand Merchant Investment Holdings, RMI, well, they're the mothership that own a controlling interest in OUTsurance, as well as a significant stake in Discovery and MMI. Now, they closed an international deal to buy 29.9% of the UK digital motor insurance provider Hastings Group for between 487 and 499 million pounds. And that makes them the biggest single shareholder in that particular business. Now, Hastings is a digital general insurance provider that operates principally in the British motor market. It's said to have 6.4% of the UK private car insurance market under their belt. And that translates to about just under 2.3 million live customer policies. Now, RMI already has a number of investments in insurance businesses in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and indeed the UK. But this is easily one of the larger ones. So RMI is also the corporate force behind South Africa's leading fintech accelerator / incubator, Alpha Code. They're based in Sandton, Johannesburg. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on their moves in 2017. Never a dull moment over at RMI, it seems. Meanwhile, Standard Bank South Africa has acquired FirePay. They're the company behind SnapScan, the popular cashless, cardless payment app that uses QR codes to initiate payments through a user's phone. Now, annoyingly, the details of the deal remain undisclosed, but one can only surmise that it's not an astronomical sum, given the fact that Standard Bank, as a listed company, would have been, forced to disclose it if it was significant. Nevertheless, FiPay has assured users that SnapScan will continue to be available to users of other banks as well. The app supports credit cards and most debit cards from South African banks, as well as 3D Secure enabled international bank cards. Now, FiPay is expected to operate independently of Standard Bank, and they've indicated that they'll continue to develop and expand their offerings. To Nigeria now, where the fintech startup Paystack has closed a $1.3 million seed investment round, which roped in quite a few high-profile international investors, including Tencent, Comcast Ventures, as well as Singularity Investments. Now, Paystack is a payment solution for the global e-commerce platform Shopify, and they aim to open up the e-commerce market for thousands of Nigerian online retailers. The startup is the brainchild of a Y Combinator alumnus named Shola Akinlade. His aspirations for the business include expanding to the rest of the continent once Nigeria has been conquered. It's hard not to see the potential of a service that allows merchants to sign up and receive live platform agnostic payments from customers within something like 30 minutes of integration. That sounds pretty good. Definitely looking forward to having Paystack grow across the continent and make their way to South Africa. To Egypt now, where a relatively new VC fund called Algebra Capital is busy raising $50 million. Now, according to the Egyptian investor Ziad Mokhtar, $40 million had already been raised by the end of 2016. Now, Algebra Capital was founded in 2015 by KI Angels, Khaled Ismail, along with Tarek Assad and Ziad Mokhtar, who are both principals at iDevelopers. Now, it's said that Algebra will target Series A and B investments primarily in technology startups. So it'll be interesting to see what they get stuck into in 2017. Now for two noteworthy deals in the recruitment space, starting with the Kenyan career development startup Fuzu, which boasts a community of over 180,000 users in Kenya. Now they've raised 1.88 million in funding from investors including FinFund and Barona. They plan to use the money to expand on the continent and into Asia. Now, they launched in 2015 through the backing of the Rockefeller Foundation and in partnership with Accenture. But since then, Fuzu has helped thousands of users learn new skills and find jobs. And where exactly in Africa and Asia they plan to expand remains to be seen. But definitely with traction like they've enjoyed so far, one can only hope they'll do well. Meanwhile, in Egypt, the Egyptian online recruitment platform Wuzuf has acquired the job assessment startup Verify. That's Verify spelled Viriphi. They've done so for an undisclosed sum. How annoying. Now, that's left room for speculation as to why Barshasoft, Verify's parent company, would actually sell. Would it be to fund a buyout of some kind, to release some of its investors? Now, you might recall that Barshasoft closed a Series A funding round at the end of 2015. That was worth about $1.7 million. That was led then by Vostok New Ventures, as well as the UK-based Piton Capital. Now, I do wish we had a more open culture on the continent when it came to disclosure around mergers and acquisitions within our startup ecosystem. Now, if any of you know more than we do about any of the quote-unquote undisclosed sums we've cited so far, please drop us an email at hello@africantechroundup.com. Now, here's one last significant piece of fintech news that dropped during the last month. A non-for-profit currency scheme called Stellar, which is financed by Stripe and other leading global fintech players, is currently being hailed as potentially one of the most promising global money transfer networks ever to leverage blockchain technology. It's been built to target the world's largest remittance markets. Now, Stellar has partnered with 4 key institutions to enable low-cost global money transfers, and those are namely India's largest private sector bank, ICICI Bank, Coins.ph in the Philippines, Tempo Money Transfer to serve 35 European countries, and Flutterwave in Nigeria, who plan to use the Stellar network to support cross-border payments for M-Pesa in Kenya, Ghana, as well as Nigeria. Now, transactions processed on the Stellar network are said to take only about 3 to 5 seconds to complete, and they remain extremely low cost regardless of the size of the payment amount. And so these attributes position the platform to perform pretty well in terms of facilitating international remittances. Now, intermediaries beware. This is going to be an interesting year. Certainly for long-standing incumbents in the banking industry, because the pressure from new players clearly will not let up. And now on to some important media platform news. The relatively new conglomerate Ringier One Africa Media is reorganizing its portfolio on the African continent. Now, I suppose that news is not totally unexpected given how mergers often result in corporate weight loss. Because you might recall that in May last year, Ringier Africa merged with One Africa Media to create what they called then Africa's largest classifieds group. Since then, they've shut down quite a few job sites. Brighter Monday, Rwanda, Cheki, Tanzania. They've also indicated that Cheki, Zimbabwe, Cheki, Zambia, as well as Cheki, Uganda are likely to close as well. It appears that the group is looking to focus on consolidating their business in a few key markets, probably Nigeria, Ghana, probably Kenya as well. They probably plan to sort of, settle down, make sure they've got those key markets on lock before expanding into other smaller markets. It's just another reminder that Africa is not a country, folks. You can't just copy and paste things and think you'll win. It's worth mentioning that Ringier One Africa Media's biggest competition on the continent in the classified space, that would be Naspers. They've pretty much gone through a similar slim and trim drive to try and bring back the good times in as far as their classifieds business are concerned. So let's see what kind of a year 2017 turns out to be for these two classifieds giants. Perhaps this is demonstrating that trying to dominate by being in every country on the continent isn't a winning strategy. And so how about this for innovation in the consumer tech space? The UK-based provider of pay-go solar home systems, Azuri Technologies, and the home entertainment satellite provider Zuku have launched a complete pay-as-you-go satellite TV package that's targeting Kenyan households that are currently living off the grid. Now, for roughly $1.43 a day, households can access a 24-inch TV, a satellite dish, a Zuku decoder, along with an entertainment package which comes with 48 TV and 21 radio channels. Now, in addition to getting up to 5 hours of normal viewing per day and 4 bright home lights, the deal includes mobile phone charging and a rechargeable portable radio. Now, initially, the service will only be available in selected regions of central Kenya, but rollouts are planned for the rest of the country throughout 2017. They're no doubt targeting the over 5 million households that are currently living off the grid. Now, I like this innovation because it's eye level, it's grassroots, it's clever, it's simple. It's, to me, the truest and most useful form of innovation, the kind that the average citizen of the country can enjoy. And not to, slight any other kind of innovation, but I feel that's just the best kind for the planet, So big up to them for this initiative, yeah? To Cape Town, South Africa now, where the city has celebrated the delivery of free Wi-Fi to just over 1 million users who collectively have used 24.7 terabytes of data at an average download speed of 30 megabits per second from across 363 Wi-Fi zones in the city. Now, according to city officials, the top 4 most commonly used applications on the service have been YouTube, Google, Facebook, and, of course, WhatsApp. And so far, the city of Cape Town is pretty satisfied that the $14.7 million of capital allocation for its broadband network rollout project is being well spent. It's keeping them on track to achieving the broader aim of making Cape Town the most digitally connected city in Africa. Now, that's not a title I expect any of the other great cities on the continent to forego without a fight. So, but more power to them for truly taking broadband to the people, making it mainstream. A big thumbs up to the city of Cape Town. And now for one last item before I squiz through some international news items that trended over the holiday. To my homeland, Zimbabwe, where my countrymen and women are no doubt breathing a sigh of relief as mobile network tariff increases instituted last week following a government directive were hastily reversed following public dissent on social media over the matter. Now, following the government directive to raise prices, Econet Wireless, which is, of course, the biggest mobile telco in Zimbabwe, had started charging $5 per 250 megabytes of data. This is up from just $1 per 250 megabytes of data. Now, thankfully, those charges didn't last long. And in a statement made by the country's ICT minister, he said that the government and the telecommunications regulator, Portraz, had agreed to scrap the new floor prices for telecom services. Thank goodness. So it's back to $1 per 250 megabytes for data, at least for now, and let's hope it stays that way for the foreseeable future. And so, now for some international news items. Let's see. Perhaps let's start with Yahoo or Altaba, or I think that's what they've decided to call themselves. I don't know how many of you were surprised and or disappointed to find out that the massive Yahoo hack that we all found out about last year was in fact bigger and worse than we all imagined. Sensitive data of no less than 1 billion email accounts, folks, compromised. That's billion with a B. One just has to spare a thought for that poor Marissa Mayer, who's had a run from hell trying to turn Yahoo around. I mean, Altaba, whatever they call it, Alta, just a horrible name. Anyway, I was thinking the other day, like, what's she going to do next, after taking a really long nap, After taking a really long nap, it'll be interesting to see what Marissa Mayer does next. Because, there's just so many fundamentals working against her at Yahoo. She probably made some bad judgment calls as well, but one has to feel for her in terms of just how badly that's all turned out. It's up to Verizon now and Alibaba to carry on selling pieces of Yahoo away and keeping what they can to monetize. It should be interesting to see what Altaba turns into in due course. And hey Uber, we see you over there in San Fran, rolling out self-driving cars that aren't quite ready for real life. And maybe it's humans, actually, Shame. Maybe it's humans that aren't quite ready for self-driving cars, So either way, I give them 10 out of 10 for effort. I'll give the folks at Uber 10 out of 10 for effort because, it's quite a gutsy thing that they tried to pull off in just putting them on the streets without asking permission. Yeah, it didn't turn out too well. You won't catch me in any of those things, at least for another couple of years, or at least until traffic regulators give Uber the green light. You see what I did there? Green light. Now remember, they got shut down when one of their prototypes got caught running through a red light in front of a pedestrian. Of course, they got caught on camera, which made all the difference in the world. And so after that incident, the DMV in the US instructed them to take all those self-driving cars off the road. I wonder what they'll have to do to prove to the DMV that they're indeed safe. But seriously, though, I'm genuinely rooting for this driverless car thing to become a thing. I personally hate driving, and I totally enjoy the ride sharing vibe. I could live with it becoming like a mainstream thing. So the only thing is, I reckon if you're building a career around driving for Uber or Little or Taxify or Zebra Cabs if you're in South Africa or someone like that, you need to be asking yourself, what next when they eventually replace you with a little black box? It's definitely something to think about. And finally, what a couple of months Amazon has had, right? My goodness. A lot is made of Steve Jobs' contribution to consumer tech, but man, this Jeff Bezos dude is a beast. I mean, first, last November, Amazon Prime Video finally went global to give Netflix some serious competition. It came to the party with some brilliant award-winning content that's wowing fans and critics alike. And then in December, Bezos announced that Amazon had made its first commercial drone delivery to a shopper based in Cambridge, England. And of course, I must remind everybody that Africa did beat Amazon to the whole commercial drone delivery buzzer. And so whoopee for us. But hey, in fairness, I have to sort of admit the regulatory hurdles a company like Amazon has had to overcome just to get, that delivery done. So congratulations, still in order. But for me, the absolute kicker has to be Amazon's killer bid to dominate the world's $25 trillion retail industry. And they did this by demonstrating what the future of brick and mortar shopping is likely to look like by launching a 1,800 square foot store. Now, they've called it Amazon Go, which is a fitting name. This experimental store is based in Seattle, and it just lets people walk into the store, wave their phones to let themselves in, and then just grab stuff off the shelves and walk out. You have to hand it to Jeff Bezos. Some boss moves of the last couple of months, definitely keeping things interesting from a headlines perspective. And so that about does it for our roundup of all the biggest headlines that dominated the festive season. Now, as many of you know, at the beginning of each year, the world's largest tech conference goes down in Las Vegas. That's, of course, CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. Now, if you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, which, of course, I encourage you to do, then you'll know that this year we teamed up with the Swazi Bridge Project to bring you Africa-focused highlights from the expo. And they came courtesy of Nicholas Stewart, who is CEO and founder of the Swazi Bridge Project. Nicholas and his family live in the Washington, D.C. area, but his heart is well and truly here on the continent. He travels between Swaziland and the U.S. quite frequently, and I'm very pleased that I'll have him on the show in a moment to discuss some of the most important issues he encountered at CES 27. Some deep, some not so deep, but it's all gravy, as they say, so take a listen. Well, look, let's jump into the best of CES. That almost rhymes. So let's start with some of the softer issues, the less serious things that CES has come to be. I mean, it is the consumer electronics show, so I mean, it is consumer driven. Tons of fridges, lots of TVs, lots of things people love to crave or covet. Yep. We won't judge that. But tell me what kind of stood out for you in terms of like your visits. What was really cool? What caught your eye?
One of the things that definitely stopped me in my tracks, I was walking through one of the showroom floors and came across a Sony television that is thinner than my index finger. And I stopped to take a look at it, and I took a picture of it, and I said, well, you know, the camera by itself without any perspective next to it doesn't really capture it, so how can I figure that out? So I actually put my finger on the one of the corners of the television from the side, and the TV was literally thinner than my index finger. And the picture quality was very vivid and stunning. It was very impressive to see, just because I have a flat-paneled Samsung television, and it's probably 3 or 4 inches thick, and you know that's kind of been.
And you thought that you thought you were the man.
Yeah,
you thought you were balling.
But this TV was about a half an inch thick, so very impressed with that.
Well, I'll only be impressed when you can roll it up like a yoga mat. How about
that? Yeah, definitely. I was actually
listen to the hate.
I was trying to rationalize it in my head. I was like, how could I justify this for my wife? Well, I do have some back problems, so if the TV's thinner, that means it's lighter. So, sweetheart, we have to get this TV because it'll be easier for me to move it.
That's really sound science right there. But then there's so let's transition from that. So there's a lot of stuff like that. New phones, Nokia announcing their new smartphone, yada yada yada. Right. Then somewhere along the line, there's a really interesting interview you had, and which I'm going to plug again that people should go check out on our Facebook page, facebook.com/African Tech Roundup. We'll probably share the podcast on our quick chats playlist as well in due course. But go check it out there. You chatted to someone with an interesting SIM card that could be pretty game changing for those of us who have taken quite readily to messaging.
Yeah. So the company is called ChatSIM, and I spoke to one of the co-founders. His name is Juan de la Copa. He's from Spain, but their company is based in Italy. And what ended up happening, how I came across them was I was doing some editing and things like that in the media area and decided to take a break and stretch my legs for a bit. So did some walking around on one of the showroom floors, and I came across their booth, and I saw it and it kind of caught my eye, but I wasn't really paying a lot of attention. But on my way back, I stopped by again, and their advertisement says that they have coverage all over the world, that they're in 150 different countries. And so I grabbed a quick flyer and then went back and continued my editing. When I got back to my room that evening, I looked at the flyer and I was like, wow, I really got to talk to these guys. So I went back and set up the interview appointment. So I was pretty blown away. I don't know that I'm terribly easy to impress. A refrigerator with Wi-Fi doesn't really get me excited. But reading about what they're doing, essentially in Swaziland, for example, the cost of data is very high, and a lot of other parts of the continent as well. They offer a SIM card that is good for Android, iPhones, and Windows phones as well. It's $15 a year, and
15 US dollars?
yes, 15 US. Yep. And that allows you to use apps like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, WeChat, KO Talk, BlackBerry Messenger, and a few others. Unlimited text message and unlimited emojis for $15 a year. And the price point was really the thing that caught my attention the most, to be able to go around the high cost of data and having to pay for text message per use and things like that. During the interview, I wanted to clarify, am I paying for airtime on top of the SIM card from the local provider, or how is this working? And what Juan explained to me was they have roaming agreements with carriers in 150 different countries. And so the $15 per year is the only fee that you have to pay for texting and emoji using those messaging services. They do have sort of a premium plans where if you wanted to send pictures or make WhatsApp calls, you could buy additional credits on top of the $15 a year. But
Do you buy them through your carrier, or do you buy them through?
you buy them through the chat sim directly.
Okay.
They're
I think
looking.
he's onto something, in a way, because I mean, there's a lot, Africa is obviously leading the world in terms of like mobile penetration, but it's often overstated just how many, in terms of like volume, how many Africans are actually, have actually adopted new technologies, or are even ready for it in terms of affordability or access. There's still basically millions,
Sure.
hundreds of millions of Africans and other people in other parts of the developing world that aren't nearly as ready as, the rest of us more affluent world citizens to, to basically enjoy the best of the web on mobile. And for them, I see this really as a quite an interesting proposition. It'd be interesting to me how he plans to take it to market, what's in it for the carriers, if he succeeds. There's obviously a timeline in which this is going to be hot. After a while, I mean, the world will move on, I'm sure. So I'm sure there's time sensitivity to his idea. What do you make of it? Do you like the idea? Do you think it's interesting? Do you think it could catch on?
I like it quite a bit for a few different reasons. One of them is it allows just basic communication to be much more affordable. And I look at it from two perspectives. I look at it as from my perspective as someone who travels. For example, when my wife and I are in South Africa this upcoming summer, by simply swapping out the SIM cards in our regular phones, we'll be able to use WhatsApp to communicate with each other the same way that we do now, or Facebook Messenger, things like that. But even for local Africans, it's an opportunity to have more affordable communication. And they have maybe 10 or so different chat messaging services that they're currently using. But the way that their company is set up, if the next big chat service comes out, they can add that model to their
Quite
services.
easily.
Yeah. So as far as the evolving cycle of what's popular to communicate on as far as platforms, they can definitely keep up with that. As far as their distribution, they're launching their first beta store in an airport in Europe. And airports, from what they were explaining, an airport kiosk model is going to be one of their prime distribution ways. But they're also going to be doing local franchising and distributing where different folks in countries around the world can contact them and become partner models.
Resellers.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think that's a potential from an entrepreneurship standpoint. I like the service. I like this what it delivers to users, but it also enables people to sort of get in on the business without having to develop the idea or the infrastructure themselves. So encouraged to
So
see what
hey,
happens with
maybe
that.
maybe it's a business you could maybe people should give them a shot and see it might be worth your while to build a business or basically add it to a business offering you already have if you're already in that kind of business around the continent. Let us know if it's any interest to you, and of course we'll make sure all the details are available on our Facebook page, of course, as well as on AfricanTechRoundup.com. So it was so one more light thing, and then maybe we'll move on. And
Sure.
you tried out VR goggles for the very first time. I'm jealous, only not because I haven't tried VR before. I've tried everything Samsung has to offer, which is pretty great at a consumer level. But you tried the very, very high end stuff. So tell us a little bit about that. And given your expectation, I was following you on social leading up to it. You were really excited about VR and trying it for the first time. For someone who had super high expectations and really excited to try it, what did you make of it?
Yeah, so I'm a science fiction fan, kind of a nerd in that respect, which I'm proud of, so that's okay. Big Star Trek kind of guy, and so conceptually, technologies like VR are things that I've kind of seen sort of fantasized on television for a couple decades now. So the fact that these things that I grew up as a kid that kind of gave a futuristic look into what space travel could be and things like that are now starting to come to fruition. I was definitely excited, and there have been a lot of attempts over the past, I don't know, handful of years to really develop and launch VR. But it seems that really maybe 2015, 2016, VR has kind of taken off as being the hot thing in the tech world. A lot of big companies are investing resources behind it. Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, even Google.
I mean, you live in a big metro like DC. Give me a sense of how excited people are, like the everyday people. You know what I mean? Because, we see the companies get excited, but it's part of, it's
Sure.
important PR for companies to have a space race that they,
Sure.
a push towards something that sort of sells them as being at the forefront of innovation. And I feel like VR is that for a lot of companies, even though I'm not convinced of its viability as the business that could be the business that could come out of it. And I'm not blind to the potential if people take to it, but I don't know how, if at all, people are taking to it. Like in a place like DC, surely you should sense that this could be the next big thing. Will it be? Is it?
I think as far as the size of scope that it will have, that still remains to be seen, only because the business model itself is still something that has to be ironed out. And what I mean by that is, like you were saying, a lot of these companies are investing resources into it. I don't know at this point that there's been a lot of consumer adoption yet. There's a handful of things behind that. So you've got some of the companies like Samsung and Google that are doing VR using mobile devices. That's a lot more affordable because it's a device you already have, comparatively affordable. Some of those phones are still pretty expensive. But then at the other end of the spectrum, you have Microsoft's HoloLens, and I'm a kind of a tech-oriented guy. The computer that I own is not strong enough to power HoloLens. So with something like that, you're looking at having to not only spend hundreds of dollars on the system itself, but also hundreds of dollars buying a computer that can actually operate the system. And then to complicate that, the cost factor even further, the platform designers, the game makers, there's not a whole lot of content out there yet. So what developers are going to make content for which platforms, that's kind of a yet to be seen. How much are those games going to cost? If I already spent $800 purchasing a computer and the system, do I want to spend another $50 or $100 purchasing a game? I do think on the consumer adoption level, the PlayStation VR is going to help to penetrate that, because the barriers to entry are a lot easier. You're not having to purchase a lot of sensors. the PlayStation in the U.S. is already a device that a lot of consumers are using. It's a platform that they're already familiar with. It's just a new sort of attachment for that platform. So I think that's going to help. I think if VR is here to stay, it really needs to make some
It's
consumer.
going to need to find ways to like go mainstream in ways that aren't going to like ruin us if we're going to adopt this thing.
Is it going to be a movie theater type of experience where you and a few friends go to a movie theater or to a venue and do it all together for a flat fee? Is it going to be people purchasing these things in their homes? That one, the home model, I'm a little more skeptical to. Even an example. So I have some friends who are gamers. I'm not a super big gamer myself, but they play a lot of these larger platform games online with their Xbox. Well, that requires you and your friends to have the same system at your house. Well, the problem when you're talking VR, what if I have a HoloLens, but you have the PlayStation VR? Can those two platforms, can we play the same game at the same time?
And let's talk about how all your friends have to be filthy rich.
Correct.
Basically, no poor friends.
Yeah. So I think a public space model is more likely to succeed than the at-home model.
But even that's got its challenges, though, Nick. I mean, the whole movie watching experience, which is under threat now thanks to Netflix and other things, a whole bunch of things, really. That the internet, mobile, all sorts of things,
Sure.
is under threat. Part of how cool it is like the sort of communal experience of like watching a movie, experiencing with a lot of people, and VR is it basically takes you in yourself even further. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Which is a tough thing. Well, look, I'm not a hater. I've enjoyed. I know it's enjoyable technology. It's fun to see how far the stuff can go. Widespread adoption obviously promises to bring down price points and make it something for everybody, which is that's the kind of technology I lean towards, and I know you lean towards really the kind that's not just cool but really cool for everybody, which it may just become, but certainly not for a while here on the continent. Now,
Sure.
Speaking more directly about Africa-centric issues that were touched on at CES, that Fintech featuring quite big this year, yeah, and Africa is I suppose leading the way in many respects with regards to our innovation in that space. Tell me about what you picked up in as far as Fintech and the hopes people are pinning on it delivering inclusion in ways that we probably haven't seen in decades past.
One of the things that I was most excited about were checking out some of the panels that were around FinTech that they had at CES. There was one specifically on unleashing the high-tech power of the underbanked, and it had 4 panelists. One of them was the founder and chief innovation officer for Nucleus Software, which is a company that seeks to provide software services and things of that nature around the world. I think 3 out of the 4 panelists were doctors, so they were definitely very knowledgeable in this space. We talked a lot about some of the barriers to banking in developing nations, and even not just in developing nations, but one of the case studies that they discussed was apparently a high portion of Uber drivers in the United States, New York specifically, didn't have bank accounts. So a lot of the folks who wanted to drive for Uber didn't have bank accounts, and so Uber came up with a solution where they, in essence, became the bank themselves. They started issuing debit cards, Uber debit cards, where they would pay out their drivers on those cards directly, and they could use them for e-purchases. So it's interesting to see models where corporations that aren't in the banking business, Walmart, for example, is another one that has similar models where they're crossing into the finance area to kind of serve a need. The traditional banking...
And it's interesting how Africa's been doing it, though, right?
Absolutely. And in my mind, that's always been one of the beautiful things about technology in its ability to really to take an idea from inception and to create it by sitting behind a keyboard, by identifying a problem and coming up with a solution to it. I think in years past, the idea of a random person starting a bank is kind of an absurd one. How would I even go about starting a bank? Where would I get my branches? How do I get the technology? Those things like that. But now with
now it's like, don't even call it a bank. Just, help people pass money around,
definitely
create a wallet and pay for stuff.
One of the things that I did discuss with a couple of folks while I was there was sort of some of the fintech solutions that have been on the continent, such as M-Pesa and some of those other solutions.
Econets and
In my mind, there's still a disconnect in that the solutions are good because they're solving a need, but they're regional solutions that don't necessarily communicate cross-platform. And it is important to always have solutions that are developed for the specific ecosystem. But when you're talking about the digital divide, there's a difference between access and inclusion. So if I can pay for groceries in my market, that's fine, and that's one thing, but that's not the same thing as being able to do commerce with a neighboring African country if those ecosystems don't exist as well.
Absolutely.
And so there are a few startups that are looking at developing some cross-platform solutions where they take the existing services and products that are out there and allow them to communicate with one another. And I'm excited about some of those.
Which also, I mean, interesting you should mention that, which makes what happened in Senegal, and I can't remember the other African country, but Senegal, launching that e-currency of theirs, quite significant. The rationale being in part that they need to find a way for the various mobile money services offered in that country by the various mobile telcos and others. They need to find a way to actually have everything work seamlessly, right, within the country. And you're taking it even broader. I mean, we should be in a position to use mobile money cross-border. So we're probably much closer to seeing that happen than, say, a country like the U.S., to be honest, right?
I'm not sure, because in our perspective at the U.S., there are already a lot of different platforms like PayPal, for example, where...
Oh, yeah, and of course Visa and stuff like that. But I mean, okay, I suppose the difference is... here, I suppose, that a lot of the mobile money innovation hasn't come from the legacy finance space. So you've got players that haven't traditionally been in finance now becoming serious players within mobile money,
Definitely.
and yeah, they, for the most part, haven't needed to lean on legacy players, and now there are quite a few of these players that need to sort of start to work together in order to provide like the customer a seamless experience.
What I would love to see ideally is the ability for someone to pay for something on Amazon using M-Pesa, a system where, again, those solutions that are regionally based can be used across the continent of Africa and around the world. Again, when you're talking about true digital inclusion, that also means for me to be able to build a service or product in Swaziland and be able to sell it in Nigeria online in an easy way. And it's the fact that things have developed regionally. I think some of them are intentional, because you've got some of the telecommunications companies that are developing these mobile money solutions. They're incentivized to kind of keep a fenced wall, if you will, so they have more control and more revenue things. But from a computer science standpoint, you're just talking about getting code to communicate with each other. It's definitely doable from a technological standpoint. You're looking at...
I mean, Bitcoin fans would be like, but of course, I mean, cryptocurrency, come on, Bitcoin's like waiting to fill the gap. It's performed well over the last year, still flying high, some sense of bubble about to burst. But did it factor at all in any of the discussions you attended?
There was some discussion of Bitcoin, but one of the limitations of Bitcoin is what vendors will accept that currency. It allows you to send money internationally from a person-to-person standpoint. But if I can't pay my electric bill with Bitcoin, does it meet those basic needs? If I can't pay for my groceries with Bitcoin, and I do know when it first came out, there were some hotels who would take Bitcoin and things like that globally. I'm not sure how many of those are still accepting it.
So the idea of cryptocurrency hasn't been embraced as readily as it because I mean it's in principle the blockchain and potentially its potential to basically allow us to assign value. Bitcoin is it's just one of the currencies available. Sure. But I mean the concept of cryptocurrency I think freaks out legacy players to the point where it might be a while before that becomes a thing, I guess.
It does, and there's also a generational divide. You're seeing millennials. The way that money has gone from physical currency to having like a check to then having debit cards and things. Yeah. I don't own a checkbook. My wife has one. But I don't even,
Bless her.
Yeah, I'm not even sure where it is. I don't know the last time that we've used it. So I think the digital currency model is something that will be adopted as younger folks continue to get older and make up a larger market share of consumers. Because you have different applications and platforms where a group of friends can go out to dinner and instead of dividing the check up by pulling their wallets out and splitting up money, they'll pull out their phones and transfer money electronically to pay for the check. Whatever solutions that are developed, they have to work. And I think that's the biggest thing, because I still use a card myself. I rarely carry cash on me, but whatever solutions have to work. And they have to work everywhere.
Many, many thanks to Nicholas Stewart of the Swazi Bridge Project for joining me on the show. Now be sure to follow his organization's moves on Facebook at facebook.com/Swazi Bridge Project. On Twitter, they're at Swazi Bridge, or just visit their website at swazibridgeproject.org. Their passion for trying to bridge the digital divide in Swaziland is actually quite admirable, and we certainly wish them all the best. My full conversation with Nicholas will be published on the Quick Tech Chats playlist, which you can find at africantechroundup.com. And of course, if you missed any of the sights, sounds, and interviews that Nicholas published while he was at CES 2017, you'll find them all at facebook.com/African Tech Roundup. That's facebook.com/African Tech Roundup. And so one last time, many thanks to GoDaddy for sponsoring this episode of the African Tech Roundup. Now, remember, you can buy your own domain name, build your site, or use any of GoDaddy's business tools and save 30% at trygodaddy.com/African Tech. That's trygodaddy.com/African Tech. So that's it for this week. I look forward to having you join me again on the show next week on africantechroundup.com. But for now, I'm Andile Masugu. Until next time, do take care, Africa.